like network, obviously you have some of the world's largest advertisers with you, India's largest advertisers also surely. How much are they embracing digital vis-a-vis other other media?
Yeah. So to my that earlier point of media mix, right? If
Right.
you look at start categorizing into sort of various category and set of client, there will be category in client where you go as high as like half the spend on digital. So some of the category and especially categories like e-coms, or classified, or a digital businesses lands themselves well. So naturally
Right.
they are the large spender in a digital environment.
Right.
But beside that, if you also look at categories like a tech, telecom, or many of the youth-focused brand, where digital has become a very, very significant part of media mix. So it's becoming very important component to integrate the rest of the pieces also. So two things is happening. So digital is what used to be a side of plate is becoming center of the plate, and it's also becoming a glue, which is in a way integrating the rest of the pieces together. So if you look at today, most of the activation ideas you see for the brand will have a digital or a social at a core, and then that gets surrounded by traditional media.
So are there certain kind of brands? We'll have a lot of our viewers who possibly also want to know, are there certain kind of brands which lend themselves very well for digital in terms of branding opportunities, or is it case to case?
So I don't think there's a standard answer. In my view, the starting point is more of audiences and what's the outcome you're looking at. So rather than brand, basically, is your audience online? Then of course you find the right environment or right way to reach them.
Right.
So that becomes starting point. And second piece is what's the outcome you're looking at, and is it engagement, is it awareness, or you're looking at transacting online. So once you're fixed on these two, then you will find the right avenue within digital environment, right platform within digital environment to reach people.
So is it essentially a male skewed audience, as one who looks at in a typical media agency kind of a language? Is this a male skewed audience which would otherwise watch the business channels, the business publications, and the like? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it used to be highly male skewed, but now if you look at, there is a significant growth happening on the sort of female side, and it's becoming more and more balanced. And I think what is contributing is again platform like Facebook and WhatsApp and those kind of platforms, which is bringing that balance back. So eventually, it will start reflecting the
So the
demographic.
women are doing Facebook and WhatsApp. Is that what it is?
I would not strictly say that, but that's becoming entry point. So that's where you start because that's becoming in a way induction to the internet,
Right.
and then you sort of take it forward from there.
Okay, we've discussed the entire population. We've discussed ad spends. Uh, we've seen various waves of the internet boom in the late 90s, and there was a lot of content based sites. We now have e-commerce, which is booming, and uh, uh, they are all advertising
Yeah.
a fair bit. Interestingly, most of the e-commerce players, they're advertising on traditional media. So whether you have print or outdoor, etc., is that what they need to do to ensure that they make their presence felt?
Yeah, so it's a pretty interesting point you made. So if you look at many of the e-com company, the starting point was basically digital, right? So they started building brand in digital environment, and the way
Right.
they used to advertise also in a digital environment.
Yeah.
However, they reach a point where they need to expand the category or getting to change habit kind of situation because there are various sort of mind blocks or broad blocks associated with the e-com, and that's the reason most of the guys jump into traditional media because it's a something which you can surround and make it larger than life, and it eventually result into habit creation, right? So that's where I think role of multiple media and multiple screen come into it. But even if you today you look at most efficient way of converting transaction, it remains online only, even for e-com companies. So the sort of last mile or closing part happens still on the digital media.
Yeah. So which means that if you are an e-commerce player, then it makes sense to get to do more of digital advertising, digital promotion than through mass media promotion.
That's right. However, the India is a juncture where the category expansion role somebody need to play, and that's where the big boys are playing that role. Amazon, Flipkart, and those kind of guys. So they are in a way creating category for e-com, and that's where it's important to go sort of multi-screen, go into mass media.
And typically, does that significantly increase their footprint or their user base? Advertising in mass media?
Yeah, when you get into mass media, yes, it increases because it will result into sort of more visit, more query on the search kind of platform, and also it's also building sort of category confidence in terms of transacting online and building the trust factor,
Right.
which was the requirement at this point of time.
So, what kind of, as I was mentioning, that there was this whole wave of content plays which was there, whether it is in the form of news content or whatever else was there. Now it's more e-commerce. So, what, according to you, is going to be, in a sense, the next frontier? If some of our viewers are wanting to know as to what they should be getting into, is there some kind of a crystal ball that you can gaze at and you can predict what's going to come up in the future?
Yeah, so a difficult one, but I go back to this 2 point and one we already discussed. One is I think mobile is going to be the critical in 2015, and it's a real transition year. And it's very important for brand to start leveraging mobile as a platform in whatever sort of relevant way is required for the brand. Second important point, and I'm just going back to some of the number which we discussed. If next year is going to be 300 million plus number,
Right.
English speaking population in country or English understanding population in country is not more than 250 million. Somewhere it will be very important to get into sort of more visual way of communicating to people and more language neutral way. So that's where the role of video and visual communication is going to be more important next year onward. So that's another data point one need to keep in mind.
And videos obviously require a fair amount of uh, bandwidth, and ensuring that the bandwidth is good quality.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But having said that, even in an infrastructure constrained environment, people are still consuming videos.
And we're sitting here at the Google office, and YouTube has had an interesting feature where you can download uh, stuff and watch on offline.
Yes, yes.
So even they are kind of trying to adjust to the Indian environment,
Yeah,
and
in a way localize their product, which people can download, carry it on the pocket, and then sync wherever they get better connectivity.
okay. So you mentioned mobile is a platform that people should look at. On mobile, is there are there specific areas, because we've seen content plays having already been taken care of. There are newer things which keep coming up, but that's few and far between. E-commerce, the bar has already been raised. Are there any other services that you think will work in a big way?
Yeah, in fact, I would like to go back to content because what is happening is there's a huge amount of clutter currently in that environment, and it's
Right.
going to multiply, right? So it's very, very important that brand has a very interesting way of storytelling, and that's where the content is going to be play a very, very critical role. So there has to be a very crisp, very immersive way of storytelling which is required. And I think partly that Rob also spoke, what we call is advertising in the stream.
Right.
In fact, while we are talking, there must be like a 20 notification in our tray,
Right.
20 Twitter alert and sort of 30 Facebook alerts, right?
Right.
So there is, you are competing with the rest of the world in
Right.
your brand of storytelling. There is some event happening in a Peshawar or somebody sort of doing some activity. You are competing with 20 distraction in consumer's life.
Right.
It's going to be more and more important to find a way of storytelling and then getting attention in a split second.
I keep hearing about native advertising. Is that something that's going to grow in a big way? Has it grown already in a big way? You know,
Yeah, so and there is a two sort of area, and I think somewhere both are related. I think the brand with the purpose and brand with the good activation platform is going to be sort of more and more important. When I say brand with good activation platforms, brand need to have a sort of consumer connect on which they can create content and which they can add a value to the consumer's life. And that's where I think native content will play a role. So you are in a way giving your brand story in a very, very informative way, which is helping consumer to sort of understand that. And if you are adding value, then consumers are going to more and more receptive to consume
But is
those kind
there
of
is there
content.
any issue about integrity of content? For instance, and I'm specifically talking about Huffington Post, which GroupM is partnering with, and Huffington Post, as a very powerful and credible source of news, also has its
Yeah,
native
yeah.
content platform, and where they have tied up with a motherhood kind of a microsite where so is there a thin dividing line uh, between this advertorial kind of a content and uh, what works for brands?
I think as far as the integrity go, most of the guys will have their own way of addressing that in terms of the way they classify, they in a way disclose, in a way they inform consumer. Okay, this is what you're reading is a paid way of, and then there's a news kind of content, right? So they clearly classify these two kind of content. But what they effectively do is they have a sort of audience base, their captive audience base, which is looking for certain kind of content, and then if that content pops up which is relevant to them, they end up consuming it. And even if for example, Huffington Post, what is known as a news kind of content destination, if you look at the state, more than the half the content consumed on Huffington Post is lifestyle content.
Right.
So it's people popularly know them as news site, but and people end up consuming more than 50% of content which is lifestyle, and that's where some of the native content can play the role.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? You have a site which is known for its news, and people actually watch 5 ways to look slim, 5 ways to look beautiful, what cream should you should have.
Yeah. So
Is that what the net is all about? Is that people look at it for various things, and you really don't know what people are going in for.
no, I think it can be beyond. As I started, it's adding consumer value that's more important, and that's the starting point for native.
Yeah.
It's not a hard sell or a force plug to a content. So I think that's the way one need to move. And it can go up to, as I said, sort of brand with the purpose. And one of the good example I would like to quote is Power of 49 by
That's right.
Tagati.
Amazing. That was
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
So there was a reason, right? There's a purpose, and on that platform, brand can rise. So if you get into those kind of cause or something which you can add back to society or add back to consumer life, consumer are going to more than receptive to the brand ideas.
Yeah, and in Power of 49, it was very clear it was Tata Tea.
Yeah,
It was reasonably in your face. At the same time, it didn't come across as
that's right.
as very pushed. Right?
That's right. That's right.
But I must tell you about this. About Just to digress, I said about Huffington Post. Fact of the matter is that I used to work with an afternoon newspaper in Bombay, and a lot of people would say that they would read the newspaper not for the news but for the crossword and for the
Yeah,
horoscope. So
yeah.
I guess it exists for everything. But coming to what according to you will work, do you think it is transaction based, as we have seen in the recent past? Transaction based services have actually earned the top dollars in terms of funding, etc. So is that a clear focus, clear way of attracting the money bags, so to say, for people who want to get into the medium?
Yeah, those are the waves, right? So right now, e-com waves seems to be a sort of season. But and again, I think somewhere next wave might come in maybe content or the regional kind of penetration which is happening. So all these are waves. Uh, I don't think it's a specific thing which going to sort of take the full pie.
Yeah.
And it's a diverse ecosystem. There'll be multiple opportunity, and I think there is, at least for next decade, I can see the opportunity keep coming.
Yeah. My next question to you was on regional, and you mentioned about the fact that the internet, the mobile penetration in India is not going to be necessary for the English speaking and the English understanding. So, how much of the regional play is going to be dominating the digital media?
Yeah, I think the next phase is going to be important because now we have crossed that stage where people are no more
Right.
understanding English.
Yeah.
And there is some fundamental work is also required, and some of these I think guys like Google also doing simplifying the language keyboard
Right.
or creating a sort of open source uh, font and those kind of things. I think there is some standardization, some amount of infrastructure work required to populate regional, and more content push is required. If you even go back to any other media, for example, take a TV example, right? So I think some of the landmark changes happening, like there's a huge amount of content investment started. For one of the example is KBC. KBC happened was like a tipping point in many ways.
Right.
So you need those kind of content investment uh, to take it to next level, attract more number of people to the media. So I think content is going to be very important role in terms of driving growth and also driving engagement.
Yeah, but to use a very KBC example, for instance, KBC worked very well for the channel which started it, and it worked very well for the next channel also. But over the last 3 years, it has kind of waned. At the same time, you have content like a Big Boss, for instance, which has worked very well.
Yeah.
So obviously, the audience is
Yeah,
fickle to an extent.
Yeah, KBC was, I think, a relevant example maybe a 15 year back.
Right.
Today, relevance can be very different things. So I think
Right.
we need to again look at in terms of whom are we addressing, what's the current cultural context, and what kind of content required.
Okay, just to switch gears, in terms of there are a fair number of our people who want to get into this medium. Is there any specific formula, so to say, that to make it big in the digital domain? Is there something that they should be looking at all? Is it first of all more technology, or is it more storytelling and content, or whatever it is? Is it essentially a technology driven play?
Yeah, I think sort of it's of course a complex ecosystem, but like people like us in the digital industry also has made further complex. So I think it's important to maybe start somewhere, maybe start small, but start somewhere and then sort of get your learning in place. Uh, and one can also simplify and say, if I think to do 16 to do, and I can also attempt to give some of these things. Uh, Maybe one of the ways, if you're doing any campaign for a brand, it's important you extend into digital environment. And if you have doing a TV kind of ad, it's very simple to extend in a digital environment. The way you run a TVC in a sort of TV environment, you can extend and get into a platform, video platform, and online, and look at your extending your campaign. Because audience have moved to multi-screen, it's important you as advertiser also start thinking multi-screen. So that's a simple extension. Second way is also adding an engagement layer using digital as a medium. So when you are building your campaign, use digital to close the loop and then drive engagement, be it in terms of brand engagement,
Right.
be it in terms of closing loop, transaction, so whatever is required.
Yeah.
Uh, Third area can be digital can be sort of integrator of all your campaign. So one of
Right.
the example is Kisanpur, which we did for Unilever, right? So where everything was central core idea was transactional driven, central core idea was online, and then you surrounded with the TV, print, and other media. Again, culmination happens on digital, but the amplification happens in other area. And the last piece is of course transactions. So if you're either in a services business or transaction business, this is a good channel which you can invest and establish as a sales channel. And not necessarily you need to be in e-com business, but you can be in a services business. So for example, another client is Domino's Pizza. Right? We do a significant amount of transaction on online channels, online and mobile channel. So it's just a pizza ordering services which we are promoting through that.
And do you think brands and companies can look at promoting themselves only on digital and not on the traditional media? Is that something that's possible?
Uh, yes. So as I said, yes and no. If you're doing a sort of building new category or category development kind of work, then you need a larger sort of mix. Uh, However, in case of many of the brands which are one use certain brand, it's easy to build even only an online environment.
Right.
And if you look at many brands today, their entire franchisee base may not be more than 20-30 million.
Right.
And internet audience is maybe 5-10 times bigger than their all franchisee base. So I think reach is not an issue. Is how you use and what you do in that environment is critical.
I'm going to raise one question that is coming from one of our viewers, and basically he's asked this question as to, I have uh, been a business person for many years, and now I'm looking at trying to get into the digital domain because I want my son also to be involved in it. And he says, I'm into manufacturing. Do you think selling my products on the internet is something that I should be doing? So, and he's into some stuff like hardware. He's not specified. But do you think that's as you just mentioned, that for sales, this is a good channel to have.
Yeah.
Do you think that's delivering results for people?
Yeah, and I think one of the example is Alibaba.com, right? Is one of the most valued company in the China,
Right.
which is in fact the starting point for Alibaba was a B2B platform. So there is a
Right.
significant B2B activity, even if they are in the hardware side of business, is happening in this environment. So either be it in terms of supply or source, both are possibility where you can transact uh, in a B2B kind of environment. And if you look at in a value term, maybe B2B commerce is a very significant business.
And do you think that's going to grow beyond B2C e-commerce?
Yeah, B2B is already significant. However, many of the transaction doesn't get concluded, but matchmaking, sourcing, identifying, all these works pretty much happens
Right.
in online environment.
Yeah, and what is, you mentioned about in the regional space. Okay, is there enough, while a lot of platform work is being done by the likes of Google, etc. But do you expect that the regional players will have their own language content in a big way, or you know, uh, will it be neutral kind of a thing that will work? Because at the end of the day, given the fact that India is essentially is a federal kind of a system where you have so many languages, do you think all of that will grow in days to come?
Yes, I think both will happen. One is the offline player uh, will
Right.
start creating sort of online
Right.
content. And if you look at even today, the catch-up TV, basically people watching the TV content on online environment is one of the large category. So those content or those type of content will start going into that environment. There'll be producer which will start creating content only made for online environment or made
Right.
for mobile environment. So that's the second piece. And then there is a long tail, which is individuals, bloggers, video bloggers, musician, artists. That ecosystem will get created, and it's already vibrant ecosystem in Indian context. So that's going to create a long tail of content.
Yeah. On the internet, of course, a lot of humor and a lot of all of these things work on the viral platform, right? And you mentioned about Huffington Post, the kind of content it works. So, or is there going to be more serious content as the numbers increase? You mentioned 25% of the population is on the internet. Do you see the kind of content also changing in the immediate future?
Yeah. So some of these whatever man biting dog and all these things will keep coming and going, right? So uh, that will continue to happen in a long tail kind of environment. But the serious attraction of viewer will happen on some of the hero content. And to my that earlier point, there need to be investment in content from the ecosystem is required. So there is need to have some hero or market content for each of the platform to drive viewership, and then you can have a long tail of content which is getting extension in terms of more frequency, more viewership.
Uh, Tell me, in terms of talent, is that I'm sure at GroupM you must be looking at hiring a lot of talent, and now who
Yeah.
are into digital. Is there enough of a supply for talent? Is that something that is that worry you? With what is available or not available?
Yeah, I think especially digital marketing talent is of course the issue. Having said that, the sort of next generation of people are coming. They are already aware. They are already living digital life, right? So this is many of these things coming very very naturally to them. So as of now, there is of course supply constraint in terms of supply constraint in terms of management capability, mid level and senior level.
Right.
But the entry level, I don't think there'll be issue 5 or 10 years down the line. There are more people entering the industry, so there'll be enough people in next 5 years time.
So are B schools, etc. Are they training people on digital?
That's right. And even if you look at today, many of the sort of key campuses, the day one will be many of the digital company, IITs, IIMs.
Oh yeah, we've been hearing
Yeah,
about
yeah,
crores of rupees
yeah.
being
So I think
paid
there are
to.
enough people entering the industry, so I don't think that's the issue. Also, India is becoming a hub for many of the digital marketing activities also. So,
Right.
for example, activities like SEO, there's a huge amount of work happening for market like US and Europe out of here, and focusing more on the SME. Similarly, creative production, there's work happening. Even things like ad operation, there you will find a company in India which
But
is
all
doing
that
that.
is a lot of low-level kind of work, right? You have, as in, you have SEO, which is essentially
Yeah, so kind of work which will get outsourced will be more process-driven work, so that's easy to outsource. So those kind of work are getting handled out of India in many markets.
and that's not something that you should be one should be very proud of doing in terms of the fact that if
Yeah,
you're doing SEO kind of work, you're feeding in your you know feeding in words to ensure that
yeah.
you
Having
know
said that, that becomes a starting point, right? And also the next level of work possibly can come from is more analytics-driven, more data-driven work. Again, work like creative and all is very culture specific, so it's difficult to outsource. But
right,
work which is very standard in nature can be easy to outsource.
and that you think will grow in a bigger way.
Yeah, so India has a good chance to become a hub for those kind of activity.
But obviously those kids who get jobs are not going to get 2 crore salaries as the kids who got from IIT.
Yeah, so those are, I think, right now more of startups and e-commerce company kind of
Right.
people are picking up. But many company run sort of offices in India where lots of product development also is happening. So even Amazon, Google, all these companies.
You know, just to kind of get back to the branding thing, which is a question that a lot of people have, is that the measurement system, because obviously people are looking at ROIs, etc. In the traditional media, you have you have standard software, standard providers who are doing that. How is it in terms of the measurement? While you have your Comscores and Google Analytics of the world, are people happy with the kind of results being thrown in by measurement?
Yeah, so I would say two things. One is in traditional media there was requirement of doing a pre-planning and post-planning because there are sample-based methods and stuff like that. While in online environment, uh, in a way you run campaign and measure, it's more on a universe level. So pre-planning have a limited role to play in those environments because you are what you're doing with pre-planning is identifying the buckets which is required for you and maybe key site set.
Right,
But beyond that, you are looking campaign on more or less real time and optimizing it.
right,
So it's an improvisation
right,
environment and it's not execution and wait
right,
for outcome kind of environment.
right,
So
right,
it's a slightly different environment and that's the way it's going to evolve. Where you talk more at a universe level rather than the sample level data and then sort of try and extrapolate. What sample data adds is any incremental data points to have decision making, but beyond that,
right,
no.
right, right. Uh, you're very actively involved with the IMAI, etc. Is there a fair amount of research being conducted in terms of how you know how the internet is being consumed? Are there new frontiers of that people that have been uncharted people should be looking at in terms of achieving? Is there some
Yeah,
data and some
yeah, I
research
think there
available?
is a good amount of work over last few years in terms of at least establishing the basic number, basic behavior, demographic data, and stuff like that. I think what's not its all is more on the mind mapping side, and I think that's where the more work required from a brand and again agency ecosystem like us. So cross media impact. Uh, Again, what's the impact of brand building in a digital environment? So there is empirical learning which exists on a TV print for decades, right? So that level of depth is not there yet in a digital environment.
And that's being worked on. Is Are people from the ecosystem here
That's
taking care
right.
of it?
That's right. Yeah. But at a broader level, digital is much more measurable medium where you are exposure to transaction, whichever level you want to measure, the data points are available.
Yeah.
And many times the question is what you want to measure, are you measuring right thing or not? So it's in terms of at a campaign level, there's enough data point exist, but in terms of sort of behavior level, maybe there is more work
And
to be done.
unlike print and television, where there are a lot of disputes anyway about readership study and you know rating points and whether it's right or wrong, etc. That's really not there as much in digital, is it?
Yeah, so there are discrepancies which happens, and there are again some of the global norms also started emerging. Because again, I'm just going back to we are doing it universally, all right? So there'll be ad serving, there'll be third-party monitoring, which happens simultaneously, and globally also it's evolving in terms of how to measure and stuff like that. So there are acceptable norm in terms of discrepancy between various data point, which has been becoming in a way global standards. So yes, discrepancy happens, but there is way to resolve those things.
Mobile is where you think is the future, and talent is available. Uh, we've said 25% of India is digitally active. Most of and this population is there is almost equal to what is there in urban India. Um, is the whole branding community alive to this whole activity? Are they really investing enough money in it? I'm not very sure whether they are. So, is there any way of evangelizing the digital medium that needs to be done to go ahead in future?
I think what is required is simplification. So right now, for many marketers, that looks too complex in terms of multiple agency ecosystem, multiple partners, how to go about it. So I think as an industry, what we need to do is try and maybe simplify more and more. So it's easy to onboard client, get that comfort, get them to do a sort of first view campaign or first view activity, test the medium, and then we provide it.
And is that what you're doing at an agency like GroupM and
That's right.
various other
That's right.
agencies?
Yeah. Yeah. So we try to address in both way in terms of giving simplified structure to sort of work with the ecosystem. Also in terms of giving certain thumb rules, give a matrix which is comparable and comfortable they are historically. Uh, Talk about more outcome which is more brand level metrics rather than intermediary metrics which is most digital that stroke. Uh, so we are giving them language and the way of measuring which is more they are familiar than the other way around.
And what are the challenges that you face right now? Is there what is it that gives you some sleepless nights uh, in terms of what are the achievables?
So I think the challenge and exciting part about digital world is it's a pace of change, right?
Right.
You wake up next day and there is a 10th thing happen already. So I think the pace of change sometimes is a bit unnerving, and in a way, actually taking entire team move with that pace is also going to
So
be
what's hot today could be
challenge.
obsolete tomorrow.
Yes, yeah, and that's why it's important to stick to some of the fundamentals, which will be long term. Some of the trend or fad can keep coming and going, but as long as your consumer centric, brand centric approach, the fundamentals are not going to change.
Great. That's a good note to end our conversation. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I would like to quote a sort of discussion I had early this year with Shekhar Kapoor, and you know Shekhar is very
Right.
active on digital. So before we did the WP stream, we were chatting one day,
Right.
and he said digital marketing like a Shiv Tandava.
Uh-huh.
I asked, and what's the context? So it's a very sort of vigorous consumer movement which is happening, and speed is important, but even more important is the rhythm. So I think
Right.
it's very critical to move fast, but be in a rhythm with consumer is also equally important.
Yeah. Very well
Yeah.
said. Thank you, Tushar. Thank you for
Thanks.
this time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.